What's up, art family? It's Tay with the Beginner Drawing Course, and today I'm going to show you how to draw trees, and this is a beginner-friendly tutorial, so don't worry if you don't have a lot of drawing experience. Let's dive right in. So essentially, when we think about trees, you can think about a very basic kind of shape. You have your more sort of pine trees. This is just a really rough sketch right here. You have the pine tree shape, and you have the more kind of flowing, kind of more elm or more, I guess, maple trees where you have shapes that are similar to this, and denote some vertical lines right here to show that there is the trunk of the tree, after which I will go ahead and maybe mark off where the top is going to end, and then I have a sort of general kind of conical shape, sort of a elongated ellipse shape, which is just a fancy word of saying a circle in perspective. So this shape is going to guide how we're going to draw the pine tree. And when it comes to the next steps of drawing the pine tree, what I typically like to do after I've established where things are going to begin and end, aka the proportions, I will typically start to establish some of the foliage that kind of breaks that shape, and where that can kind of start and end. So you can see I'm kind of just going up and down here, and I know we're going to taper at the top and we're going to be wider at the bottom. So then I have some marks here to kind of hit in terms of my actual detailing and shapes. You see I'm laying in everything before I get into tons and tons of rendering and detail. So rendering is when you're going in and you're shading very acutely, very close, and this is some really rough rendering with a very small brush, and it starts to create shading when you build it up enough. But if you don't have a decent block-in drawing, you're going to shade something and you're going to see proportional issues and errors. It's just not a lot of fun. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to speed it up a little, and I'm going to increase the size of my brush. For those of you wondering, I'm using Procreate on an iPad. So basically what I have now is just a trunk that I've shaded in and some rough indications in terms of where I want some of these branches and the foliage or the needles of the pine to fall. After this, I can start to render, and it will be more proportionate because I've already established those proportions. So you can just go ahead and start making marks that are kind of any direction that you want, and I'll show you on the side here. And you see there's sort of a cluster of them. They have a nice kind of needly effect, I suppose. And that's one sort of way you can make your marks. Another way is just to keep them all going the same direction and build that up on top of each other. So this is where we get into the actual part where it feels like you're drawing or shading, as opposed to sort of sketching. So these are just some ways and some different condensed marks that you can use to start building up values. And if you're not familiar with these terms, that's okay. This is the Beginner Drawing Course YouTube channel, and you can always go ahead and take some of the free lessons on the Beginner Drawing Course website to help you get up to speed in terms of the kind of terms I'm using here, because the terms are important. They will teach you what to look for and how to talk about it and how to talk to yourself about it, more importantly, in your head. So I'm just going to go ahead and start building up those marks here. And you can see this is going to take a little while, but this is drawing, it's not racing, it's not speed boats, or I don't know, insert fast thing here. I am going actually pretty quick just because it's a demonstration, and I'm just checking back in with my reference. And what I'm doing now is squinting. I'm not just squinting at you. You're not doing anything wrong. This is for the reference, so I can see what parts are darker, and so I know to press down a little harder. I know to create some little patches of heavier marks there. And I can just begin to create some nice kind of marks that are going vertically and kind of transitioning into some more diagonal shapes. And you can see it looks kind of messy and not that clean or articulate, but we can always go ahead and clean it up later. I just want to establish the base shape and some of the base values, and just to kind of get the bigger parts marked in so I can kind of see what I want to clean up or what I want to alter. And you can use your eraser to just to get rid of some of the stuff that's really bothersome, or what I like to do in this kind of style is to kind of smudge it out if you can, to kind of draw a little less attention to it. So the smudged areas are ways of softening edges, and edges that are soft typically don't draw as much attention as edges that are hard. But again, I'm just giving you these kind of broad principles. It's hard to condense every single drawing aspect into one little lesson on how to draw trees, but the general kind of idea here is to understand the drawing element, which is, the sketching in, which we did. The proportions are established during the drawing phase. Then we also want to establish the shapes during the drawing phase, after which we will begin to establish things like the character of the tree by adding in some marks that are favorable. And I showed you a couple different marks you can make with the sort of demos on the side here. We'll smudge those just to show you on the screen. Those are some good marks you can make in order to create an effect that simulates pine needles, or simulates a condensation of different foliage on the picture plane. I'm going to get rid of some of my sketch lines here so that we don't let people see sort of the wireframe or the architecture of our tree that we established right away, because that's breaking the illusion that it's a tree, right? So drawing is sort of about creating an experience for the viewer and an experience for yourself, because you're the first viewer, effectively, and testing that by ensuring that the areas that you're working on look how you want them to look. They're feeling like they're proportionate, or like there's some, I'm going to get a different eraser here so I can erase a little softer and not have to smudge it, so that they're feeling like how you want them to look, feeling like it's a tree, feeling like it's got some darker shaded parts and some more light parts where it's not so heavy on the shadow. And you'll see the trunk going in and out through different parts of the tree. It's that main vertical line we sort of established. So I'm going to add some darker patches for that to make sure that we give the illusion that the trunk runs all the way up. And it in fact does. And so this is basically just a sketch of a tree. It's one way I like to do it that has a reasonable amount of realism for how quick it is. There's obviously lots of ways to tackle this, lots of different ways to use line and shape and edge and eventually color, but all those things are things I have to teach you in my beginner drawing course. So this has just been a nice little tutorial, nice little demo how to draw a pine tree, how to draw a tree in general. You can apply these same things to other tree shapes you want. We kind of can establish the big shape of the tree if we want, and just rough it in, know where we're going to begin and end, and then we'll kind of move and draw some of the negative spaces of the tree so that I know that I'm not going to be adding leaves there, because it's going to break the illusion of branches. So I know I won't be adding a lot of leaves to those areas. And I will just kind of start sketching the edges of it, like the contour. This part's called the contours, the outer edge of something. And I'm letting my hand be kind of shaky. There's an art to that. And I'm just filling that outline that I created for myself with a slightly shaky hand. I'm not going in and being really clean and crisp with my marks, because that's got a different use, that's a different technique. It's kind of like on guitar, where you can strum in a bunch of different ways for different sound and different types of sound and different techniques. It's the same with your drawing hand. You learn to develop these various techniques. I teach some of these different mark making exercises or different types of line and identifying lines in the beginner drawing course, which again, free lessons on the website. The video on this channel has been viewed more than 600,000 times from 2015, so I've been doing this teaching thing for a little while now, and it's nice because it lets me always recap what I'm doing. So this part right here, I think I'm gonna start moving it over, and I have those other guide points right here, here, and here, and here. I know I'm not going to be creating a lot of leaves there, so I'm just kind of dancing around those for now. A lot of drawing is just establishing for yourself areas where you're going to come back to later with more clarity once you have the big shapes in. And then I can go in again and start shading. A lot of this would get covered up by the shading, but if you're doing trees in line, you really don't have that many places to hide. You have to figure out every little way that the leaves are touching, every way that the different openings are going to be through the tree. So there's going to be these tiny little openings that are going to create enough negative space to give the illusion that there are more leaves up there. So that's something to think about as well. Again, when I'm sketching for demonstration purposes, it's difficult if I'm not doing a really involved illustration or like a 2-hour tutorial of start to finish on something like this to get a solid result, but we're going to get something that's feasible for, again, a beginner. I want you to feel like you can do this. I don't want to show you, oh, I've been drawing long enough to figure out how to make a tree in a bunch of different styles. I'm using this as a means to give you different tools and different approaches and different vernacular, different verbiage to help you parse this process for yourself in case you found this video. And if my SEO is correct, you found this video because you want to draw a tree. So I'm showing you a couple different ways to do that. And hopefully you have enough patience to watch videos like this. I know with the advent of AI and social media feeds and stuff, it can get pretty difficult to be able to consume content that's any longer than, a minute. I keep erasing parts because I want the lines to look more confident where they connect. And a big part of that is actually being very unconfident in those lines, like erasing and redrawing at parts where they're not connecting in ways that feel like they should. And again, my tendency would be to start shading some of this too to help define some of the forms inside of the tree, not just the outlines or contour. When you're working just in contour, that's like a big beginner mistake. You're not really giving any internal form or internal indication inside the silhouette, which is the flattened shadow of the tree. So if I were to create a whole like fill in here, like if I just trace all of this really roughly, I'm going to do this super rough because it's faster that way. If I do all this and I block off all these areas, which it probably won't work that well with this particular brush, but you can see that that's the silhouette of the tree. And that's actually a great way to draw a tree, honestly, is to check how your big shapes are looking. It simplifies everything so that you can just go ahead and add more complexity on some of the edges, because you don't want to get too lost in the sauce if you're drawing too lost in the details, which you can easily do in a tree. So there is one way in particular of sort of shading the tree, and I can lower the opacity and still see some of my line work and work with layers in a way that's artistic and useful. But I think that's enough. I think you have enough of a basis to start drawing your own tree from the tools I've given you. Again, I'm Tay from thebeginnerdrawingcourse.com. You can always check out the Beginner Drawing Course or the Art Maxion bundle if you're more interested in getting all the way to the point where you can take commissions and stuff. So yeah, if you want, feel free to subscribe, like, share, all the good YouTube stuff. Comment down below what kind of trees you like to draw or why you're learning to draw trees. Helps with the algorithm, helps with the channel, yada yada. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Take care and happy drawing.